The Baltimore Ravens are gearing up for their wild card weekend matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but a Ravens cornerback is causing some former Ravens players to get a little concerned. We talk about that. Plus, Dan Orlovsky was badly exposed in the Lamar Jackson MVP talk. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this Taco Tuesday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We are free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form where you can follow along, subscribe as well. We're 5 days a week plus more. Daily Ravens coverage, news analysis, updates, and so much more. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You're started with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Here with us today, it is the man, the myth, legend himself, former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. And Q, I feel like this was just what was meant to be. Ravens and Steelers, round 3, AFC North divisional playoff battle. You and I have talked for years now about how these games can get all sorts of crazy with them knowing you and you knowing them. But man, this is the first time Baltimore and Pittsburgh have matched up in nearly a decade in the postseason. And with all the other crazy Ravens-Steelers stuff that goes on, you throw the records out the window, throw how you're doing out the window. I think the playoffs just takes that to a whole nother level.
I tell you what, I've been a part of it when I was with the Minnesota Vikings. We played the Chicago Bears for the third time, which was the playoffs. And unfortunately, we were succumbed and they won, and off they went to the next round. We were one and done. But I will say this, I think the Ravens throughout their time, they've played other division opponents, whether it been the Titans or Jags or whomever, even the Steelers, and they've had their fair share of victories. They've had their fair share of defeats also. Heck, my very last game as a Raven was in the divisional round with the Pittsburgh Steelers, going down, with the Steelers in 2001. So, yeah, these games are intense. They're awesome. They are intriguing. What you can do against another AFC opponent that made the playoffs, you can't necessarily get away with your division opponent, because they just know you. They know the nuance, they know the details, and it's intense. I mean, it really is. And I think this is going to be an interesting game because of the fact, face it, they lost 4 in a row to Pittsburgh Steelers. Saw the stat where the Cincinnati Bengals held them under 200 yards of offense for the first time since 1988. Bruh, let that sink in. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are muddling in mediocrity, but yet they're the Pittsburgh freaking Steelers. And for whatever reason, something happens somewhere, somehow. Thank goodness we ain't over in, Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium and worrying about Renegade. But mother of pearl, yeah, they're the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's what it comes down to. You get the chance to start off your playoff run with your most hated division rival. And I think the two teams obviously have a lot of respect for each other, Q, but we know that, and you know it very well, being a part of it, when that ball gets kicked off and the game starts, physicality on deck, crazy games on deck. And I think we're going to see another one of these games in the wild card round. Now, a couple former Ravens players have expressed some concerns or dove into a certain player on the current Ravens defense, Q. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, that is Brandon Stevens. Bobby Trossard does a great job with his Ravens content, had Jimmy Smith on his pregame show. And the conversation of Brandon Stephens came up, and Jimmy said the ball hits the air for him. Panic settles in, I think, a little bit, and he just doesn't gently turn around, go up and grab it. If you have lapses in your game, they're going to come after you. So for him, it's like, oh, you're good, you're really good, but I'm always betting 50-50 that when I throw the ball, I'll know if you're going to turn around. And right now, he's 50-50. And then Marcus Spears, who played for the Ravens as a defensive lineman, another former Raven, he was talking over on Get Up. And he said, I'll tell you this, that Brandon Stephens scares the hell out of me on the back end. So seems like people are identifying a Ravens defense that has done wonders, turned around their season. The secondary has been incredible. They've made tough choices and it's paid off for them. But it feels like people, specifically former Ravens, are identifying. So I want to ask you, Q, a former Raven, do you feel that Brandon Stephens is the weak link of this defense? And is there concern for you with Stephens going up maybe against a George Pickens or some of these other elite wide receivers the Ravens are going to have to face on this playoff run? Or do you have confidence in him that he'll be able to lock it down this playoff run?
You said the word playoffs. When it's in the playoffs, it's a whole different ball game. The Ravens, the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Texans. Who else is in it? Like Chargers, all of them. They all are now honing in on what they, as a team, do best. Offensively, defensively, special teams. But they're also honing in on what is the best way to attack another team's weakness. How do you go about it? How do you match up your strength versus their weakness and exploit it? What those other two dudes are saying, what you and I on this show have been talking about the entire year when it comes to the Ravens secondary, are the inconsistencies. And now Eddie Jackson's no longer there. Marcus Williams is no longer there. You have an inconsistency in Brandon Stephens. And that inconsistency is going to be exposed on the national spotlight in the playoffs if Brandon Stephens can't fix. And unfortunately, regular season is over with. There is no fix. There is like either you're going to be able to come up to bat and be that baller, get an interception, make the critical play, or else. And I think that's what is the issue at hand when you talk about Brandon Stephens and what Marcus Spears and obviously Jimmy Smith, who's done it, been there, played it, and recognize is the problem. Like, I just know George Pickens is in his own brain, and the Bengals as a secondary stood up, did their thing, handled their business. Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator, is fired now, but at least he went out on his shield. He was like, hey, listen, I might be fired. Okay, that's all well and good, but I know this to be true. I know this. My secondary held the defense for the Steelers and held them in check. That's something that you got to look at. And right now, Brandon Stephens, bruh, we just don't know if he's ready and is he capable of taking on the challenge that is the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they like to do, which is throw the football down the football field and make big plays. They haven't made big plays. You hold them to big, you limit them and not allow big plays, you win. Brandon Stephens, you're in their crosshairs, period, end of discussion.
And we know those Russ Moonballs, Q, will be on full display a couple of times in this wild card matchup. And I think that the way that Brandon Stephens was targeted by Cleveland, particularly if you want to narrow it down on that one drive, where it just felt like it was target Brandon Stephens, target Brandon Stephens, target. And it felt like that. And he had penalties, completions. To his credit, made a good play on that Jamari Thrash not touchdown. That would have been a touchdown if he didn't punch the ball out at the very last second. But it just felt like the Browns were picking on him. And that seems to be a theme for the Ravens this year with their secondary. And we know Revis Island is a thing of the past. Shadowing is a bit of a lost start in today's game compared to what it was back in the day, if you want to call it that. But one of the things, Q, that George Pickens does really well, because remember, he didn't play the last time these two teams faced off. He flashes those hands late. And I know you being a former receiver, obviously if a corner doesn't turn his head for the ball and you don't give an indication that the ball is coming, the corner has no idea what's going on. And if let's say Rush drops that ball right in the breadbasket, Pickens can just flash those hands late, and Brandon Stephens doesn't know what the heck just hit him. So I think that that's another worry and another concern. And you're right. This is the playoffs. This isn't like, okay, we have a month to get it right before. No, I mean, if you mess up and you're a liability and you lose the game, well, that's it. You don't get a do-over in the playoffs. So do you feel like this is a correctable issue for Brandon Stephens? We can talk about short-term. We can talk about long-term. But do you feel like for him, I feel like at this point, like, look, it is what it is. He's just going to have to figure it out and try to play the best he can. But I feel like this is more of an off-season thing. And for what it is right now, you kind of just have to live with it a little bit.
If you and I both know it, the other team is going to know it. And national media, local media, regional media, whatever, scouts know it. Scouts see it. Scouts are at the game. They're taking their notes. They're watching. They're going to see the film. The players are going to see the film. They're going to start making their notes. The offensive coordinator, Mike Smith, going to be sitting there taking copious notes, and he's going to be like, man, I think we can go ahead. You're going to look at Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson going to be like, all right, bet. You know what? If I go ahead and slide protection over to Kyle Van Noy's side, and then I make sure, our guys are holding up in the middle, and maybe, get Freiermuth to occupy one of the safeties, then we can have, George one-on-one. Oh, yes. It's over. And that's the tough part because, man, like Brandon, like you said, there is no let's get this thing right now as far as offseason technique and all that. I mean, honestly, he's been doing it since, training camp. And he'll, just kind of do the whole, the guy gets on him, he'll just wrap his arm around the guy and, kind of like go down the field and hug him. And we've seen the pass interference thrown so many times. And they've, traded for Tre'Davious White. Thank goodness, he had two of the pass defenses in the Pittsburgh game at Pittsburgh. And unfortunately, Justin Tucker was going through his Justin Tucker-isms and, he figured it out. Obviously, we took the L and so be it. But, yeah, we got to see Brandon Stephens play better. And this game here is one where we know what they're going to do. They're going to try to sling that thing down the football field, get the big play. And he cannot, you just cannot, can't be that guy. They like to play a lot of man-to-man. That's the Ravens' MO. It's worked well. Now, I will also say this. It's a team sport. Okay, let's get Russell. You got to get him. Okay, Nnamdi, let's go ahead. Kyle, let's go ahead. Adafe, let's go ahead around that edge. And, you did it in that regular season. Let's show up in this postseason. Let's see what Travis Jones can kind of collapse that pocket in the middle and force Russ to throw the football away. Russ loves throwing the football away. Let him throw the football away. That's what we want to see.
Man, recently Russ has been running and tucking that thing and trying to body people. And
Trying.
Yeah, that's the key word because it's not been working for him. With Ardarius tried it in the Bengals game. That's a big thing we're going to get to a little bit later, Q, because I feel like the Russ thing for the Ravens, that is a way they can win this game. But Lamar Jackson, obviously, is hoping to get a win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I know there's a lot of conversation about the MVP. And Dan Orlovsky was exposed pretty badly in that whole conversation. So we'll talk about why, talk about Lamar and his performances, and a lot more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football, want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly. PrizePicks has got you covered with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. It's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. This week I'm on Lamar Jackson for more than 230 passing yards and Derrick Henry for more than one touchdown. It's so easy to use, and I love how fast payouts are. I've gotten paid in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit, plus the weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts add even more value to my lineups. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Down the app today, use code Locked On NFL to get $50 into the app to play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game one more time. Down the app today, use code Locked On NFL to get $50 into the app to play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher and Qadry Ismail still talking with you here on this Tuesday. Man, it feels like this week is going to go by really slow and really fast at the same time. Like, it's going to feel like we're just counting down the days to the playoffs, and then all of a sudden Saturday night's going to be here. And again, Saturday, 8 p.m. at the bank. Wouldn't want it any other way. Ravens Steelers. Who knows what uniform combination? Hopefully they wear like the All Blacks. I feel like the All Black uniforms, you just have to do that in this scenario. Lamar looks good in those. The team looks good in those. Lamar also looked good this season. If you didn't realize, Lamar is in the MVP conversation. Been a little bit of a talking point this season. And there have been a lot of people who have taken Lamar's side on the conversation. But obviously, Josh Allen's had a great year too. And there are Josh Allen supporters. And I think, look, this is not going to be a unanimous thing for either one of these guys. It's going to be a close race. But I just think when you have these conversations, you have to be not only genuine, but you have to know what you're talking about and be fully prepared. And that's why, Q, I appreciate what you and I do, because obviously we're plugged into this Ravens team and we know, the national NFL landscape. But we don't pretend to go out there and say, we know everything about the Kansas City Chiefs. We know everything about the Detroit Lions. Dan Orlovsky, national analyst, he knows his stuff. He played in the game too. He played NFL football. But when talking about why Josh Allen deserved the MVP, he said, well, Josh has done all this and elevated, and the Bills' offense is historic, and they did this without an 1,000-yard receiver and a 1,000-yard rusher. And I'll stop right there, because James Cook isn't a 1,000-yard rusher, had 1,009 rushing yards.
16 touchdowns.
Got snubbed from the Pro Bowl because Bills people are talking about how Josh Allen has no help. But here's my thing. Dan corrected himself. He admitted the mistake on Twitter after the fact, and I'm sure he'll admit it on TV as well. But you have to know when you are on a stage that big, when you have a vote in this conversation, and when your voice carries as much weight as it does, you have to know what you're talking about with these stats. You can't just be – this wasn't intentional. I know some people do. I personally don't think this was an intentional. He's spreading misinformation for Josh Allen, but it's a big mistake, and he's been called out for it. This whole situation with the MVP has kind of taken a wild turn with all the conversations around it, Q. But Lamar gets punished for having Derrick Henry in his backfield. Meanwhile, James Cook must feel like he's the worst running back in the NFL based off how much slander he's gotten. And if you didn't see it, his brother Dalvin ended up talking about the whole situation. And Dalvin Cook was like, wait, this was from today? And obviously James and Dalvin, you know that. James and Dalvin. He was like, wait, this is from today? And everyone's like, yeah, they're trying to do this guy dirty, Dalvin. And just this whole conversation is getting wildly out of hand. Luckily, it's going to be over in a few weeks, but man, just unbelievable stuff.
I just think that Dan Orlovsky, I like his in general his analysis and his passion to describe plays, describe situations. Kind of get a little bit in the weeds of the mindset of a guy and what he might or might not be thinking. Most oftentimes, he's pretty spot on with it all. I think how he's fanboying Josh Allen really surprises me. I absolutely think Josh has had a phenomenal year. I think Josh has really helped his team and elevated his team to that, second seed. And I think the AFC East wasn't as competitive as I thought they were going to be. Miami, certainly they took a step back. The Jets, they never took a step up. They were supposed to. The New England Patriots, they were the New England Patriots. And then, of course, you got the Buffalo Bills. And I think for Buffalo, they have a franchise quarterback that's supposed to do what they're supposed to do, which Josh Allen did. You have a very good, stable head coaching situation, a very good situation with now a good offensive coordinator that got the feel for your quarterback. And so, you did away with some players and all the things and big play Gabe and, Stephon and all the things and some of the defenders. But then on the flip side of it, Dan wants to then kind of paint it a different color with Lamar, like there's never been another team in all of the history of MVPs that those MVPs didn't have other guys that were MVP type player or high level players on the team. Like Brett Favre didn't have Reggie White on his team, or he didn't have go-to tight ends and Mark Chmura or Antonio Freeman or Robert Brooks, or he didn't have, awesome defenses to really help his cause, or, the 49ers didn't have, great players that played alongside their MVP candidates and all the things, Dallas Cowboys, whatever. I think that's where it's a head scratcher to me, because you keep moving the bar in such a, weird way. Like, oh, well, but Lamar's the offensive MVP or offensive player of the year, but not the MVP because he has, Derrick Henry. In the beginning of the year, you just didn't even know Derrick Henry was going to be able to do it. In the beginning of the year, you didn't know if, Lamar had enough receivers. Yeah, I think a high tide, Lamar Jackson, raises all ships. I think Lamar raised them ships. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Derrick Henry is one of the all-timers. And he's had an all-timer type of a year. And it's large part due to the way the defenses had to account for number 8 in the backfield. So one hand helped the other. I just think that, yeah, that dude is an amazing running back. And absolutely. But James Cook ain't no slouch either when it comes to supporting his quarterback. And you can't just dismiss him. Last I checked, O.J. Simpson, that dude was like one of the all-time upper echelon running backs to ever do it. And arguably, if not the number one running back to ever do it for the Buffalo Bills. His record was broken for touchdowns. Cook was not. So you're saying Josh Allen didn't break the running back record for touchdown, but he had a running back actually break the touchdown record. I mean, the needle just be moving all over the place. Again, takes nothing away from Josh Allen, but I think whether you want to go statistics, whether you want to back up those statistics with your football eye, however you want to color it, because it's so funny because Dan Orlovsky is like, well, we don't want to, just purely go by statistics. Then he goes by statistics in his argument. I think that, yes, Lamar Jackson, dynamic, explosive, amazing, phenomenal player, deserves the MVP award. And I think Josh Allen, sure, is in the discussion. Saquon Barkley, absolutely, is in the discussion. But the winner should be Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, you talk about things like strength of schedule and...
Oh, we don't even want to talk about strength. Oh, my goodness. I mean, bro, like, come on. He was like facing juggernauts after juggernauts. And, and he was doing it. You talk about one hand tied behind your back, your defense, like you're putting your team in position to win games. Your defense couldn't do it. Unfortunately, your GOAT kicker just, couldn't figure it out in those games that they took L's in. So, yeah, okay, great. Still stood tall and made significant plays and was historic in his passer rating, historic in his running of the football, historic in limiting interceptions and slinging it around for touchdowns, historic and getting his receiver the ball so much that now, yes, he is going to the Pro Bowl. Historic in the way his running back and him as a quarterback, that tandem, were doing their thing. Historic in all those things. And yes, going up against playoff caliber teams, big time defenses. And oh, by the way, the Ravens defense was not in that come to Jesus moment quite yet when they faced against Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, he got benched because they're like, game is in hand. We got whooped. We're going to go ahead and live to fight another day. Let's pull him. Okay, they pulled him against the Ravens' 32nd ranked defense. Okay, I'm sipping on my water because I'm a little bit parched.
Yeah, man, when Q goes on those rants, he means business. And I agree. It's like strength of schedule plays a big factor. Head to head plays a big factor. Those two things don't seem to be talked about enough in certain circles. But you know what? Both players, incredible seasons. I'm not taking away from Josh, obviously. If Lamar wasn't having the season he was having, Josh would be the runaway favorite, and it really wouldn't be close. But in my opinion, I just feel like Lamar deserves the award, and that obviously is where I'm going with that. And Dan Orlovsky even said, because there's another thing about, the supporting cast. Oh, Josh and his supporting cast isn't, Lamar has a better supporting cast. Well, Dan Orlovsky, May 24th, 2024. Receipts are real, everybody. Bookmarks are real. Dan Orlovsky, May 24th, 2024. Said too many people sleeping on the Bills. I would place the Bills offensive pieces top 5 in the AFC when it comes to diversity and matchups. They won't have a traditional number one guy, but they can deploy Kincaid, Knox, Coleman, Cook, MVS, Shakir, Samuel. Josh has to play point guard 90% of the time, and 10% be the reason they win/make big plays. So now Dan Orlovsky saying, okay, well, no, Lamar's supporting cast is better, when there's literally a real live social media post saying that he thought otherwise just in May. But coming up in the final part of the show, Zay Flowers, John Harbaugh gave an update on him. We'll preview the Ravens and Steelers game a little bit as well. Don't go anywhere. A lot to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last season. I love going to concerts. The energy and excitement, they're unforgettable. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite live events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking up tickets because obviously the Ravens and Steelers, they played M&T Bank Stadium using the Gametime app with Gametime Picks. I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal is particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. We're back, Locked On Ravens. Qadry Ismail and Kevin Allstreicher still rocking out with you here on this Tuesday. It's a couple days away from the Ravens opening up their playoffs against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Q might be looking like they have to do it without Zay Flowers, who has been such a dynamic piece of their offense this season. You obviously know a thing or two about sports performance and training movement and the whole 9 yards there. You see Flowers go down. He's rolling around. Andrew Voorhees comes over top of him as his leg is kind of out and pushes it the other way. John Harbaugh said that he said it's a day-to-day thing and we'll see, but it didn't really feel that way. And obviously the reports coming out are indicating that it's going to be tough for him to play in the wild card round. Could certainly return after that. Harbaugh did make it clear it was not a season-ending injury. But from your perspective, Q, first of all, what did that look like for you, and how tough is it or easy is it to come back from an injury of this nature, the diagnosis and what your thoughts were? And then secondly, how confident do you feel in this Baltimore offense going up against the Pittsburgh defense if, in fact, Zay is not available?
Yeah, the PCL, thankfully, I don't think it was damaged, but the LCL, lateral collateral ligament, so the outside portion of his knee ligaments seem to be the one that is sprained. It seems like it's a low-grade sprain unofficially. I preface that. So with that, it becomes a level of how can you reduce the inflammation? How can you, get the ligament to kind of start that repairing process? And remember, ligament is bone to bone, and you're trying to get that thing as stiff as possible. The stiffer it is, it gives that tendon an opportunity to now operate and move, and then obviously the musculature and so forth as far as the biomechanics of it. For Zay Flowers, he is a dynamic, explosive player. That ligament and the way in which he moves from side to side as well as explosively going forward, that is an issue. And so I think it's highly improbable he would play. And if he did, I would be curious, given the fact that it's going to be cold, given the fact that it's a later game, and his dynamic capabilities, how effective he would be. Now, if there are full on, hey, we're going to implement plan B as far as some of the recovery tools that should be put forth and those protocols in place. Okay. Is he a fast healer? Does he do the things off the field, away from the facility, you know, to help himself out? Okay. They can figure that, he can figure that out, but those are things we're not privy to. I will say also, this is professional football. Next man up mentality. Next man up mentality. That's not an easy thing. And to that second part of your question, it's like mother of pearl. You're going to have all hands on deck. Well, those all hands on deck is going to be Isaiah Likely. All hands on deck is certainly going to be a Mark Andrews, although Pittsburgh likes to take away that security blanket. But that all hands on deck mentality is going to be Nelson Aguilar. It's going to be Tylan Wallace. It's going to be Justice Hill. It's going to be that group of players that I just named, Isaiah being number one, that's going to have to take some of that pressure based upon matchups that I've seen them employ against the Pittsburgh Steelers and let that be what it's going to be. Because, yeah, Zay, man, I mean, if again he can do it, great, awesome. Hey, let's get him out there. But if he cannot, I think that's where the creativity of these other players come in the mind of Monken, to get them up to the speed where, yes, we know that we can go out here, win this game, and then that allows for them to have an opportunity to have Zay Flowers back in the divisional round.
Yeah, that would be huge. And so based off of all the matchups, Q, you like this one for Baltimore with Russell Wilson and the defense, all that. Do you think this is a good matchup for the Ravens?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that, the Steelers putting the weird plays to the side as far as the division opponent. But I think the Steelers, their struggles are, between their ears with their offense and not really getting things going. I think the defense is really stout and strong. I think that they can, step up and do what needs to be done. I think offensively for the Ravens, it's all about how you're going to limit TJ as well as Highsmith. Both guys, they've had their fair share of, some turnover type plays. You got to limit that. Dave Faalele is going to have a huge game. I think this is a game, matchup wise, it favors the Ravens. I think, Russell Wilson, psychologically, there could be some things going on with him and Pickens. But this should be a game for the Ravens to advance to the divisional round.
Yeah, hopefully they can get their playoffs off to a good start on Saturday. Q, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on. Please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on. And if you have a prediction for the game, I'm sure everybody would love to hear it.
Yeah, I think from a prediction aspect of things, I think this is it's going to be tight. Put it to you this way, first three quarters, I'm saying 13-10. It's going to be a nil, like, oh my God. Then all of a sudden, Derrick Henry's going to go off. They're going to score a touchdown. I think then after that, it's going to be a scenario where you're going to look at Lamar Jackson breaking one. I think Mark Andrews break one. And then it's going to be a score of 30-13 Ravens. I think when you look at me, it's all about missile training, missiletraining.com. Go talk, interact with me over on my website, missiletraining.com, for all your human movement and sports performance needs. Doesn't matter the age, from 6 to 85 years old. I'm here to help you from that aspect of things. Team training I also do as well. And looking at the bigger picture, WJZ is where I'm at for Purple Pregame. And of course, every single week, we've seen it during the season, during the off season, right here, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher and I, we're breaking it all down for you, giving you all your Raven needs.
You know the drill. Be sure to follow along on Q's journey, movement journey, football journey. He has a lot of stuff going on. Links to all his work in the description down below. Q, appreciate you. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Coming up tomorrow on Locked On Ravens. More Ravens content as always. Hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.